All right, to discuss the developing political stories, Nigerian devolution of powers from unemployment, state policing, and the likes. We have been joined by Rise analyst, Associate Professor Abiodun Adeniyi. Thanks so very much for joining us on News Night.
Thank you, my pleasure, Christian.
Even at the Arise News presidential town hall meeting today, the issue of a faulty constitution, devolution of power to tackle insecurity, poverty, resonated all through the debate. And the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party and the governor of Delta State, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, is echoing the same trend. Is that really the panacea for an El Dorado for the Nigerian nation?
Well, I don't think it's going to be a one-off solution. It might be one of the solutions that we need to adopt, to resolve many crises around economics, crises around politics, etc., etc. And of course, the fact that it's resonating with everyone, it just tells us that there's a commonality of our ability to identify what the solution is. And ordinarily, you should see this as a welcome development, because there's a problem if we're not able to identify a challenge in the first instance. But in this circumstance, we've been able to identify it. But again, we also have to be careful. What does devolution mean? It's something that can be brought about through the instrumentality of the Constitution. And how do we bring about, a change, a review in our Constitution? Of course, it can only happen through a long, cumbersome process, from the National Assembly through the State House of Assembly, etc., etc. And do not forget, we've been trying to work at this since the dawn of this democracy, and it's still work in progress. Maybe we should begin to think around understanding that, like one of the candidates said this evening, that the problem may not just be constitutional. The problem may actually be with the humans, trying to manage this constitution, because we have countries, that have no constitution and they are working well, and we have those ones that have constitution and they are ever trying to amend it to bring about change. No constitution can actually be perfect. What matters is the individuals operating the constitution. How are our own kind of individuals? What individuals do we say we are? Imagine us having a referendum now. We do not imagine to have a perfect constitution thereafter, because if the human element is still problematic, one that is still less patriotic, one that does not have a sense of commitment to nation Nigeria. Of course, it's going to be back to the same, it's going to be back to square one, which nobody imagines. But it's gratifying that we all seem to be coming to the same page, that the center is too heavy. Let's have a federation working compliant with the true sense of the word federal system, like we have in the United States of America and in Nordic Scandinavian countries.
Well, Abiodun, at the end of the day, devolution of power is a form of decentralization of power aimed at promoting rapid development. And even President Buhari, as it stands right now, let's not forget he did sign an executive order ensuring that there is that,
autonomy
of power,
in local government,
especially as it has to do with the local government, which is the closest to the people. But here we are today, still having the conversation, and even a vice presidential candidate having to emphasize the importance of devolving power to come down and trickle to the people. So what exactly is wrong? You have highlighted the fact that it might not necessarily be a constitutional issue. So what exactly is the problem?
Look, I agree with you, Amaka, because the framers of the Constitution, weak, as imperfect as that document may be, didn't make any mistake, thinking that when you have a huge multi-ethnic system, you cannot govern them through a unitary system. There has to be powers separated in accordance with maybe population, in accordance with geography.
But the argument is that power is too concentrated at the center.
Yeah.
Look at what Leonard Kozekome said about
the airport in Florida,
Florida and in Atlanta. The airports, those are, I think, the busiest airports you can think of in the world.
That's right.
Controlled by not even local government, counties.
Look, Christian, you and I studied in England. You know how effective the counties can be.
Absolutely.
I never knew anything about the central government, because the counties were more than enough to satisfy.
And that's the problem. So what exactly is the issue here in Nigeria, despite the Constitution and even executive orders being signed by the president, who is still in charge today?
It comes.
Autonomy of the local government, which is the closest to people, is still not guaranteed. What is the issue here?
I don't know if we can actually be tired of talking about human element reflected in the leadership, you know. How much, when are we going to start talking about leadership? You know, because these things don't exist in a vacuum. They are not inanimate. The Constitution is not inanimate. The fact that we have federal, states, and local government, well, it's a recommendation. It's a prescription of the complete Constitution. But we need humans to implement it. And who are those humans? Are they robots? They're not necessarily robots, but they need an element, you know, something somewhere that will galvanize them. And of course, it can happen through maybe one or two leaders, you know, being very, very conscientious and driving the process, you know, because everybody seems to be lethargic in the wrong direction, working against the grain of what the Constitution says. And that's what the problem is. You're asking me, what is the problem? The problem is that we have the rules, we have the prescription. The issue now is implementation. So in terms of implementation, Amaka, who is going to bail the cat? We need a leader that will match somewhere, maybe by happenstance or maybe deliberate. In the circumstance, I doubt if it can be by happenstance.
You talk about a leader. President Buhari, in his own powers and his own, as confined and enshrined in the Constitution, has actually done what he has powers to do, which is signing executive orders to guarantee the autonomy of the local government. But here we are, state houses of assembly, we're not even looking that direction.
Do we even need an executive order to guarantee the autonomy in the first instance?
That is
it's
where
already
we find
stipulated,
ourselves.
yes.
So now that the state houses of assembly in most states are not even looking to ensure that the right of the local government is, which as enshrined, is guaranteed, to ensure that the development
needed
gets to the people through the local government, which is closest to them. So all of the laws are there. You talk about an individual. The president has done his part. Some governors have done their part. But here we are, still having this conversation.
Maybe we talk about
how do we get it right moving forward?
President has not done badly in signing the executive order, maybe as an added advantage to the prescription of the Constitution. But again, from this lesson, the lessons we are learning from the inability of that executive order to function, we can move to take it a step further. We need follow-up, you know, or we need a stronger will, a stronger political will, you know, to implement laws, constitution, regulations, and probably executive order, because we have more than enough laws, we have more than enough regulations. The problem is just execution.
Yes, I mean, well situated. But how would you describe the jamborees that we'll be having, you know, by national legislators in the realm of amending the Constitution year in, year out? We have just another 3 months to general elections, another 4 months or so to the tenure of this President National Assembly and the rest, and they've spent billions upon billions upon billions from late Senator Mantu's time when he was chairman of that Constitutional Amendment Committee to Ekweremadu, you know, Senator Ike Ekweremadu and others, and yet we're still going around in circles.
So from your question, I can see that it's not just about the persons inhabiting that institution, but maybe a problem of the institution itself, which is rooted in the system overall. You know, but to conclude again, I would say that in life, the only thing we can do, faced with this kind of challenge, is to continue to hope. You know, to continue to keep our hopes high, remain optimistic, you know, expecting that at some point, you know, we'll get to the promised land. At some point, we'll be able to make some changes to the Constitution. But remember what I said, that we shouldn't just be expecting that the change or the review of the Constitution will bring about El Dorado. You know, what about the humans, you know, that will implement the Constitution? You know, remember again that their country, Israel, as far as I can remember, the United Kingdom, they don't have a written constitution. But these are nations that are functioning very well. You know, so what's the problem with ours? Is it just about constitution? The problem is that the center is too heavy. There are so many things on the exclusive list. We need some devolution, like Governor of Delta said. You know, so if we recognize those things, you know, I remember even from the period of Sani Abacha, he set up a committee on devolution of power. It's not today.
That was where you have the 6 geopolitical zones. For
discussion around devolution didn't just start today. So why are we still there at this point? It tells me again that we recognize the problem, we know the problem, but the limitation is always execution.
But some would
so
say
we've got
for a
to
country
talk
like
to ourselves
Nigeria, for us to have almost every assembly come on and try to make adjustments to our constitution shows that there's an issue there, because that means there are lacunas that can be, you know, hinged upon by some people and just go ahead and do certain things. But as it concerns the devolution of power, it's not about the lack of laws, because the Constitution is clear with regards to the 3 tiers of government. And even the executive had to even sign an executive order to ensure that that right is ensured there. But here we are still having this conversation. But so, Abiodun Adeniyi, you are an associate professor of communications and you are almost an expert in this field. So moving forward right now, beyond amendments to the Constitution, what do we need to do as a people to ensure that the local government autonomy is guaranteed in Nigeria?
I wish I know. You know, but we just have
you have to take the position of a Houdini now. Yeah.
You know, but you see, we just have to keep trying. We cannot give up as a people. You know, I'll keep talking to ourselves. You know, and we hope that at some point, you know, we'll be able to imagine the advantages that will have accrued, that will have come to us if we had allowed the local councils to function. You know, in the United States, of course, they are called counties. I know in Nordic Scandinavia countries, they are called communes, and in the UK, they are called councils. You know,
some
and
are
of course,
boroughs.
they are boroughs. Because of the effectivity of these levels of governance, you would never even remember if the central government exists. You know, so if we can learn, if we can imagine how it is, how effective they are in those countries, then of course, if you know, again, picture the benefits that it can represent in our own climate. Maybe we can have sets of leaders who will be committed to making these things, this system of government to work. But I also want to believe that it doesn't end with just decreeing it or just wishing it to work. There are some other things that are probably preventing the functioning of this level of government. You know, do not forget that our system, our weaknesses are integrated. We're dealing with problems of dwindling resources, oil theft. We're dealing with questions of insecurity. We're dealing with questions of overpopulation. All these things are conflicting and weakening the efficiency of government at different levels. And of course, the smaller that level of government is, the more the problems can overwhelm that level. And the local government level comes to mind as the smallest, the weakest in the circumstance. Then what about the subnational level beyond the central government, where the governors are holding sway? Remember that some of these governors have been regarded as emperors. Are they allowing those levels of government, the local government, are they allowing them to function? Are we talking to them? Or is it just about talking to the local government chairman alone? You know, how committed are these governors beyond the center? You know, so a lot more talking to will have to be carried out, you know, by all parties, you know, stakeholders interested in the smooth functioning of this country politically.
Thanks so very much. Like always, Associate Professor of Strategic Communications, Bayes University, and
forget about honorifics. Abiodun Adeniyi is fine.
Thank you very much, Abiodun Adeniyi.